Hey, everybody. Hi, I'm Rick Brusuelas, and along with Hall of Famer Greg Kellogg, we host the Sports Affiliation Thursday Checkdown. Our focus is on helping you be more successful in fantasy football leagues and have fun because, as Greg always says,
If it ain't fun, why do it?
darn tootin', darn tootin'. And tonight's special guest is Alfredo Brown of the fantasy guy, of the football guy.
Football
And
guys.
I also know Alfredo through a faith and fantasy Twitter group and league we both play in, and had the opportunity also to meet him for the first time at the expo in Canton. So I'm really thrilled to have this chance to have him as a guest. So Alfredo, hi, welcome to the Thursday Checkdown. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, guys. I'm honored to be a guest here on the show today. That was such a nice, pleasant intro. Normally, it's like, all right, Alfredo, let's talk about whatever that made me feel so good. Thank you. I feel very welcomed.
Well, you
Well,
should feel welcome. We're honored to have you. And I don't know if you know how far back I go, but I knew Joe Bryant before there was football guys. Joe and I
Oh, wow.
started a
When he was a
league called
scamp.
FanX together out of the news groups. People don't even know what news groups are anymore. Usenet. We started FanX out of Usenet. So to get anybody that's associated with Joe, I'm thrilled. I really am.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah, Joe's just an incredible person. Being a part of Football Guys is a dream. To be a part of a brand and a team and a people that just really feels like a family that puts people first. And honestly, that's what fantasy football is. It's people first and it's relationships, and that's what Football Guys really feels like every single day.
Well, we're going to get a chance to learn more about you and your background and what brought you into fantasy football. But before that, we had some big news that hit today. So we thought we'd jump right into the news. That first news item is all important, especially to us folks in the great state of Texas. The Dallas Cowboys traded star edge Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers agree to pay a huge 4-year, $188 million extension with $136 million of that guaranteed. And the Cowboys, they get back 2 first-round draft picks and defensive tackle Kenny Clark in return. So that's
clearly, this is a win now move for the Packers because you're giving away 2 first-round picks, and that's going to cost them down the road. But I gotta ask Alfredo. That first game, I'm pumped because I'm a Lions fan, and I was really looking forward to Aiden Hutchinson getting back on the field. I'm thinking Hutchinson gets 2 sacks plus in that game, but now you got Parsons going for the Packers. Who gets more sacks in that first game? Alfredo, I got to ask you.
Oh man, I mean that's a tough one because Parsons going to be on a brand new team, but they typically play an edge rusher. You're not learning a whole crazy new playbook. I'm going to go with the guy that's not coming off of a major injury. So I'm sorry to disappoint you here, Greg, but I'm going to go with Micah Parsons here, getting more sacks than Aiden Hutchinson is at in that one.
Well, and the other important impact this is going to have is both on the Cowboys team, and I kind of think it's going to, boost up all the offensive players because now all of a sudden they're going to have to be scoring lots of points. Do you have any sense on what players you'd be targeting now within the Cowboys, especially on the offensive side, Alfredo?
I mean, it's the same guys that I was already targeting before. This did not change the outlook of the Cowboys. If anything, all it did was just put a magnifying glass on it because I already felt like this team was going to pass a lot. There's not a real set backfield there where they're saying, okay, we can rely on the run week in and week out with Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. I honestly think that backfield is going to end up belonging to Jaden Blue at some point, and Jaden Blue's strength is being a pass catcher. And Dak Prescott, we already know what he can do through the air. The team goes out, they grab George Pickens in the offseason. They were telling us what they want to do. They were saying, we know that our defense isn't able to stop everybody. We got to keep up with the other teams, be able to pass the ball. The Cowboys, the Bengals, and the Dolphins, for me right now, are the 3 teams that I think are going to be passing the most this year in the NFL.
Do you think 650 pass attempts for the Cowboys?
I mean, that's a lofty number for them. I would say I would probably put them around the 600 because I do think there's a little bit of the let's keep it slightly balanced as much as we can. I don't know. It kind of seems like they might try to fit the square peg and round hole with the running backs there. But regardless of if it's 600 or 650, which I mean, either is a lot. I think we're just going to see a ton of passing from this Cowboys offense. And Dak Prescott, especially in 6 point per touchdown leagues, he needs to be going higher. I've been saying that all year, and yeah, as we get closer to the fantasy football season, he needs to be going higher.
Would you even move him up as closest to like Burrow in that range? Burrow and Mayfield, that
No, I wouldn't move him up I mean, I'd have him ahead of Mayfield if we're being real here. Like I'm not that in on Baker Mayfield this year anyways. There's just too many changing parts there. Also, we have that career year from Baker, which is kind of like, do we find that to be the outlier or the new median for him where he's just going to continue to rise? With Dak, we've seen him be a top 5 quarterback multiple times in fantasy. Now you've got a team that all they want to do is emphasize the pass. They go out and have a new weapon here in George Pickens. CeeDee Lamb's still there, obviously. Jake Ferguson. It's just everything is just pointing in the direction for Dak Prescott to be passing the ball a ton. So as long as he's healthy, as long as the offensive line, which does seem to be a bit improved here, as long as all that stays together, I'm excited for Dak Prescott. So I would probably have him around quarterback 7, I believe, right behind Patrick Mahomes, but in that same area. I wouldn't fault you for taking him ahead of Mahomes.
I took a lot of heat in your football guys contest that you've got going on, this great big draft.
Yeah, the football
because
guys
in
bowl,
the
yeah.
second round I took Josh Allen, and in the third I took Pat Mahomes because I figured Mahomes is going to bounce back this year. Man, I would have loved to have got, because you can start 2 quarterbacks in that league, and it's 6 points for all touchdowns. I would have loved to have gotten Dak as my third quarterback, but I didn't.
Yeah, that would have been a good one.
Oh, no, you can only start 1 quarterback in that league. Oh, well. I still like having 2 big ones because they do outscore every other position by a lot in that league.
You know, it's funny. And too, I was just thinking the big news of the day, or at least for the show, was going to be about Rashee Rice and the 6 week suspension from the NFL. And all of a sudden now that news doesn't seem quite as important, but it's big news for the Chiefs, and also big news for any players who were had already drafted Rashee Rice or were thinking about Rashee Rice. I think there's a bit of a benefit too, knowing that not only you know how many games, it's not 10 weeks, which was one of the weeks that at one point they were thinking of, but also it's at the very start of the season, not during the playoffs. Alfredo, where would you be drafting Rashee Rice if you were drafting him today?
I mean, right now I'm seeing him go for a lot of average draft position in round 6. I'm comfortable taking him in round 5 because of the player that you're getting. Rick, what you just said, it makes so much sense, and I need people to understand this and hear this. We talked about this today on our show, the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show, which is exactly when Rashee Rice is going to be out. And by drafting him, you're not taking a 0 there. You're able to pick up other wide receivers, especially if you're drafting him in, let's say, the 5th or 6th round. He's either your wide receiver 2 or your wide receiver 3. You don't typically lose your fantasy season or your fantasy weeks because of your wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. So he's not crippling you the way that some people are thinking here. And when he does come back, he's got that upside of a top 12 wide receiver every single week. Now, do we know he's going to have that for sure? No, we don't. But we know what we've seen in the past, which is the upside is there for a massive PPR ceiling. And if I can get that in the 5th round on a discount where we probably would have ended up having to take him in the 2nd round or on that 2-3 turn, but prior to suspension, I love the discount I'm getting here.
I love it.
I can't disagree more. And like I said, I expect Mahomes to be one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks this year.
There was some other news too. And, of course, the big contract was signed by Baltimore's safety, Kyle Hamilton. He got a 4-year contract of over $100 million, which makes him the highest paid safety in the league. There were some trades, some movement. Adam Thielen went back to the Minnesota Vikings in a deal that involved some draft pick swaps. This also, I think, helps the Vikings because they know what they got with Thielen. It also opens the door up in Carolina for Jalen Coker and maybe even JT Sanders. So I think it's good news all the way around. Also, one last, was that Amari Cooper comes back to the Las Vegas Raiders. Their wide receiver one, Jacoby Myers, had been demanding a trade, and so the Raiders wasted no time to run out and grab someone who could be a suitable replacement. Either of those two moves sound good, better or stronger for you, Alfredo?
So it was you're talking about Amari Cooper and Adam Thielen here?
Yeah, those two.
Yeah, I would say the Adam Thielen move interests me more for fantasy, but I wouldn't say that I'm actively going out and targeting either of these guys. I mean, from what we saw last year with Amari Cooper, I hate to say this and you never want to wish this or believe this about players in the NFL. I think his time might be done. We just saw a guy who just didn't have the same juice that he's had in previous. I mean, he was on the Bills last year. He had the MVP at quarterback and a lot of target volume available for him, and it didn't work out. Now he goes to the Raiders, where I wouldn't say it's a bad situation, but he's still got to beat out some other guys like Brock Bowers. If Jacoby Myers does stay, he's got to beat him out. And Geno Smith's a bit of a step down from Josh Allen. So
Yeah.
I'm not as interested in Amari Cooper. Adam
What
Thielen,
about Coker? What about Coker?
Okay. Yeah, that's where I was going next. Is really, I think the winner out of all this ends up being those Carolina Panthers receivers like Jalen Coker, who I talked about him today as being like one of the guys that I really love drafting when I get into those later rounds in the teens, like looking at round 11, 12, 13. He's just a really fun draft pick for me. I almost look at it almost kind of like taking a handcuff for your wide receiver. If you've got Teteroa McMillan, he becomes a really good handcuff for McMillan, because if McMillan was ever to miss any time, you know who's going to be getting peppered with targets out of the slot there. It's Jalen Coker. We saw him be a fantastic wide receiver over the final 8 games.
Legit.
Yeah.
They have probably the best young wide receiver core in the league right now.
I think their wide receiver core has a lot of potential. I think Leggett still has some things that I want to see him work on a bit more. He's got the concentration drops. He's still not a super savvy route runner. He does a lot of the things that guys like Quentin Johnson, Laviska Shenault, Treylon Burks, athletic guys that are fun to watch. They've got to refine what they're doing. Can he do it? I think he can, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
Year 2 for wide receivers is the year, though. That year 2 and year 3 is when they usually break out and understand the game. I'm looking at that receiver core and thinking maybe Bryce Young is a great quarterback 3 to put on your roster if you have a 20-man roster.
Oh yeah, I'm very much in on Bryce Young this year. He's just got a whole different level of confidence. We saw it over the second half of last year. We've seen it in the preseason so far, and just that chemistry, that relationship that's building with these wide receivers looks great.
Yeah, as the lone Texan fan here, that first year, of course, CJ Stroud looked really good and Bryce Young struggled. Probably the roles reversed a bit last year, especially in the second half of the season. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how both of these two young quarterbacks develop in their third year. And I do happen to like Bryce Young a lot. I think he makes a lot of things happen, kind of small, but he doesn't seem to, struggle with, not being able to find passing lines. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing Bryce Young play this year. We went through a lot of news now, but I really think it'd be fun just to get to know Alfredo a bit more. And so do you want to take over, Greg?
Well, I'll start off, but stick in the background because I know you got questions too. Alfredo, I want to know more about you. All right. Yeah. We'll get into what you do, but, where do you live? What do you do outside of fantasy football?
Well, we're going to hunt you down.
Yeah, no, I'm a South Florida boy. I was born and raised in Miami in South Florida. I lived in a little suburb that's just outside of Miami called Pembroke Pines. And actually, funny enough, next door neighbors with Bill's offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, our whole lives. And then we each graduated high school, went our separate ways. And it,
do you know him?
Yeah.
Know him well enough to send him an email and say, Joe, what about this?
I was going to say, does he come to you for advice?
So funny enough is like we have each gone to each other with questions about stuff. We used to talk about, we were both Dolphins fans growing up in Miami. So like we both used to talk about the draft and a pick would happen and be like, well, what do you think? And, it's funny enough is that he doesn't say anything anymore because he kind of can't, even though
Yeah,
he
yeah.
knows me and trusts me, he really can't say much. But the funny thing is, when I was living next to his mom, I just moved recently, but his mom would say, go and tell all your audience they need to get that Dalton Kincaid kid. Joe loves him. They're going to use
I loved
Dalton.
him this year, and I couldn't get him. He got sniped 2 picks in front of me.
Yeah, man. So it's one of those things. It's kind of a double-edged sword there. You can get the information. It doesn't always pan out, but yeah, I'm from South Florida. I'm a Dolphins fan, Heat fan, Marlins fan, Panthers,
So are
all
you
that.
full time in fantasy, or do you have a job?
No,
Because you're too
I am.
young to be retired like me.
No, I am full time. Thank God I am full time here. I've been very blessed with an awesome opportunity at Football Guys where, and just to give the background here for anyone that's trying to do it, I started off as an independent creator. I created my own show called the Pretend GM, and I did that with my friend Dr. Vignesh Doraiswamy. And I have a background where I got to spend a year in the scouting department for Florida International, FIU. The college football team. That's where T.Y. Hilton and Jonnu Smith are from. And that was one of the things that I got to do was be a part of that scouting team that brought in Jonnu Smith. So that was just a ton of fun. Unfortunately, when Mario Cristobal got fired, everyone got let go. And I said, okay, I don't want to be doing this anymore. I don't want my job to rely on that. Did a couple of other things, owned my own business, got to do a bunch of fun stuff. And then eventually, quarantine hit and I did what every other white male in their 30s did. I made a podcast and it happened to work out for me. And with that, I started to do more content at Football Guys, and I learned enough about YouTube and started to get better at that and doing graphic design with thumbnails, things like that. And so now I'm the director of video content over at Football Guys and hosting the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. So it's been a nice little ladder working my way up and doing everything I can. Now I'm full time here in the industry.
You're the director of video content, so I got to tell you, you got to get my boy Tip on the air. He is really good, and he is up and coming in the industry. And his first video content was as a co-host for me on this very show. So you got to get him on the air because I think he's going to really do well for Football Guys. I do.
Yeah, we've got something in the works right now with Tip that is going on behind the scenes. So you'll be seeing more of his face on your screens pretty soon.
So did you start actually making content in 2020 or did you do it before then?
I had done like a little bit on and off. I think like anyone who starts something, you're going to try and fail. And I think that's the most important thing to recognize is nobody starts this and just has it from the get-go where you're saying, okay, I know exactly.
Well, I mean, frankly, when I started, nobody else was doing anything. So it was easy.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like you're going to have little missteps along the way. And I got the opportunity out of college. After the scouting thing, my first job out in the real world was I was an intern at a South Florida sports radio station. And I was the guy that was getting coffee and I was working the buttons behind the board and behind the glass. And they'd have me chime in for, a quick one-liner or reading someone's text, things like that. And that's where I got to get a little experience being on the mic. So that was fun to do. And eventually I just realized that it wasn't for me. I wasn't cut out for that industry and I wanted to move on.
You've got the face for video. You shouldn't be behind the mic on a radio show. I've got the face for radio. You've got the face for video. But I got to tell you, your scouting, I definitely want to have dinner with you next year at the expo because I want to pick your brain on the scouting thing. Maybe in the off season, I can get you on for another full hour show and we can just delve into your scouting because I think people would be fascinated by what goes on in scouting, even at the collegiate level. It's pretty much the same as at the pro level. The process is anyway. So I know Rick's got some questions he's bugging to ask right now. So I'll step back for a minute.
Yeah, and you, I think Greg already mentioned the Football Guys Bowl, and I'm in one of the leagues as well. So I always think it's interesting to ask this question, gets me in trouble at home. But how many leagues are you currently in? And you can kind of focus on managed leagues because I know best balls don't really count.
Man, I wish I had a direct number for you. I know last year it was around like 30, and then I told myself I needed to cut down, and I did, and I got myself down to about 18 leagues, and then I kind of got politely forced into a couple leagues. So I'm probably around 20 leagues right now. But I'd say a good chunk of those is me trying to stay in touch with my friends. And a lot of it
Yeah.
is just like, I really love what we have dubbed now the home leagues. Like that's my favorite thing. I had a dynasty league that I converted over to a redraft league with my friends, because like no one was trading, no one was doing anything in the off season. I was like, okay, let's make a big event out of this so that we all show up for a draft and let's get together and let's do that. So yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nothing like home leagues that have a live draft. There's just
Oh,
nothing
it's the
like that.
best, man. It's the
I got
best.
to tell you, I love those things. But since you're in charge of video content, are you still writing articles? Are you still doing written work? And if so, how often are you publishing articles on Football Guys?
I don't write all that often. Sometimes I do. A lot of it is just when it's gonna sound so corny, but when the mood strikes, you know. One of the last things I got to write for Football Guys was a piece that I did where I compared NFL draft prospects to movies from the 2000s, and I tried to say like, okay, if I was sitting here with my wife and she's like, "Oh, is that guy any good?" and I could say, "Well, it's kind of like the Fast and Furious franchise. Like it's going to be a lot of booms and explosions and fun stuff, and people are going to really like the bells and whistles, but it's not for everybody, right?" Like, and so I kind of wanted to do something like that and have some fun. In season, I'll probably be doing, your typical start sit column each week, but not as much writing for me. A lot of it is more on the podcast and video side, and a lot of behind the scenes stuff too. A lot of meetings and the boring stuff that people don't want to hear about.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you though, I know Rick is going to ask you about your what is it, unbinged,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to hear that too. But I want to know actual fantasy football podcasts. Are you doing those too? And if so, where can we find them? I want to see your work without paying money. I'm
Yeah,
cheap.
absolutely. Well, everything that I do right now is free. There's no payments for watching or enjoying the content that I create. So I mean, first and foremost, it's the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. Like I mentioned, I am blessed and lucky enough to work with this group of individuals. I get to host the fantasy show with my co-host Dave Kluge, and we do that throughout the season, in the regular season, all throughout the off season. We just did what we dubbed our Football Guys, just leading into how corny it is, and gave you our players that we need you to draft. And the new show that I've been doing is I brought back the pretend GM, but I did this more as a sit down interview style, where it was less about player analysis and more about talking to the people in the fantasy industry. And it's not even about how they came up, it's more of just how they look at the game. I wanted this show and each episode to feel like a masterclass from someone who is doing it professionally, and sort of bridge that gap between the person that is playing fantasy football versus the person that gets paid to analyze it. They simply just have more time and they've been able to create a career out of it. So what can we do to bridge the gap? Because I think a lot of people look at fantasy football and say it's luck. Some people say it's data. Some people say it's this or that. Well, let's try to find the skills that all of us have, put it together, and see how we can all just get better at this game and have some fun while we're doing it.
Yeah, I love the show you do with Dave. The two of you have great chemistry. Obviously, both of you know football inside and out, but you present it in a way that's very informative, especially for players or for the new player. Sometimes, I think we kind of get so far into the weeds of advanced stats and tendencies and things like that, that we forget that there's a whole world of people who probably either watch a little football on television, or they've heard about fantasy football and they're kind of interested in starting, but they don't know where to begin. So I think you and Dave do a great job of bringing people in, especially the newer players. And I think we're growing as a community as a result. So I love that. But Greg also mentioned how I was kind of interested in one of your podcasts that you do, and it sounds like it has nothing to do with fantasy football. So I'd love for you to tell us more about what you're doing with Unbinged.
Man, Unbinged is something that I've just wanted to do for so long. And the name is a play on binging. Obviously, if you're binging your TV shows or binging, set of movies, whatever it is. And What we do is after each episode of a TV show airs, we are going to break it down, discuss it, give our theories. And it's just kind of like what you would do with your group of friends, is talk about something you just watched in the group chat, you know, and like what you think is going to happen in the next episode and things like that. And it's not really the pretentious of well, the lighting wasn't great here. This is more of just like having fun, being fans. And we really enjoy that. And so a couple of things that we're doing right now is we're watching, I'll be watching Peacemaker later on tonight. We've been watching Alien Earth. We're going to be watching Gen V, Task on HBO. There's so many other cool shows coming up there. But that's something I do with, it's myself, Jagger May, my buddy from the original version of the Pretend GM, Dr. Vignesh Doraiswamy, Samantha Holt, and then one of my other buddies, Matt Kaufhammer. So we just, we've been doing this for a little while. We're enjoying it. And we actually have some really cool stuff coming up on the way.
You're breaking my heart. You didn't even mention High Potential. You're not network shows. You're talking about things that you got to have a subscription to watch.
Yeah, it's mostly the streaming stuff. Those are the big popular shows, man. It's got to be.
I love High Potential. I really do. You got a cleaning lady that's a genius and doesn't forget anything and notices everything. I just love that, because it says that it doesn't matter where you are in life, it's who you are. And I love that concept. So,
well, sorry, it sounds like you do a pretty interesting range of shows. I could suggest The Diplomat, which I'm hoping the next season comes out pretty soon. But and the fact that there are so many other things that we can talk about as a group. I know one analyst does a show about Star Wars movies with his daughter. It's just, I'm just fascinated with it. I don't even watch the movies, but the fact that he's having such a good time with his daughter talking about it is pretty cool. So love that you're doing something outside of just, not just fantasy football, but something outside of fantasy football, because it gives you a chance to kind of, try new things, do other things.
It's so nice to have a palate cleanser, something that's just different,
Love it. I want to take it back to fantasy football. We have a lot of people that watch that want to get into fantasy football. And I usually tell people, first of all, don't expect to get rich doing it, because very few people do. Very few people can do what you did, Alfredo, and turn it into a career. Okay. It's just not that many career type jobs. But do it. You just got to do it, and then you get better at it as you do it, because nobody's going to be great at it when they first start. You got to fail to succeed, is what I tell people. Yep. I want your advice to a brand new person that's thinking about getting into fantasy sports content. Would you tell them to write first? Would you tell them to start in on podcasts? What's your advice to the newbie?
I would say whatever you're going to do, just get out there and do it, and just start breaking a couple eggs. It's you can't learn how to cook without actually getting in the kitchen and using the ingredients. And that's the same thing here. You won't be able to learn or get used to making content unless you start doing it. And I say, try them all out. Do some podcasting stuff, do some writing, just record a short video of yourself, a 60-second thing for TikTok or whatever it might be. Find what you like and find what you're good at. I know that the old rule for writing is write what you know. And I would say, if you're going to create content, create what you know, create what you're good at, what you're most comfortable at. I see a lot of people, I don't try to force myself to be a writer, because I know that's not where I'm most comfortable. I actually enjoy just being in the conversation space and doing the podcast stuff. So that's where I stick to it. And then my other thing is that I would remind everyone is that you can't be a one-trick pony here. Like, you're not just a wide receiver that's good at going deep. You've got to be able to run a whole route tree here. So you do have to kind of understand how to do a bunch of different things. I would say that one of the common misconceptions is a lot of people think that full-timers or someone who has even just a part-time job in the industry, that's all they do. A lot of times you're wearing 2, 3, 4 different hats. And, I'm sitting in marketing meetings and operational meetings and social media and content and all kinds of things. I'm hiring video editors, I'm doing all kinds of stuff. So it's not just, me sitting there looking at my rankings all day and scouring Twitter. That's kind of the cherry on top when you finish doing all the other stuff.
When Fox hired me, football season ended. They're paying me $60,000 a year to write about fantasy football. They wanted me to do something in the off season, so they put me on NASCAR, fantasy NASCAR. Greg Kellogg knows nothing about racing, but you know what I learned? The crews love to talk to the media. So if you call them, they will return your calls and they'll answer your questions. NASCAR has some of the most open drivers and crew chiefs in the world. It was really enjoyable for me to branch out from what I thought I was good at and learn something new. Is there anything you warn people against? I mean, what I would say is don't be afraid to fail. If you screw it up, do the spell check, do the grammar check. Don't make the stupid mistakes. But if something you write doesn't quite hit the right note, or if you make a prediction that doesn't come out right, the best of the best are going to be wrong at least 40% of the time. It's just too complex of a system to be right 100% of the time. So the experts, I think Bob Harris is the best of the best.
Love Bob.
And I know that he's not right on every call he makes.
What? Bob's right about everything. Come on.
No, he's not, but he is better than most. He's way better than most. And he's the nicest guy in the world. That's another thing you can learn from the experienced people. Guys like Bob Harris will advise you. They'll give you their opinions. They'll always tell you the truth. They will always tell you the truth. You go to the expo. One of the things I've spent the last 2 years doing at the expo is introducing fans to content creators. The fans are afraid to go up to them. Is there anybody you won't talk to at the expo?
No, absolutely not. Like I've heard people talk to a friend that I'm with and they say, "Is that Alfredo? Like, is it okay to talk?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, hey man, what's up?" Like I'm a person. Like I'm and the thing is, like, I look at this as like I am still definitely I'm nobody in this industry. Like there are some like massive names that if they walked in the door at the expo or anywhere else, I would be terrified. Like the flop sweat would be all over me.
Rick Wolf. Rick Wolf to me last year at the expo last year, he came up to me and said, "You're Greg Kellogg, and I'm Rick Wolf." And I'm like, huge eyes, because I know Rick Wolf created CBS Sportsline. I know that he hired Scott Engel. So I knew Rick Wolf's name for 30 years. And, Joe, I don't get all doughy-eyed at Joe Bryant because I knew him when he was a boat builder before he had football guys. Scott Engel and I are peers. So I don't get all, with Matthew Berry and Scott Engel, the content creators, but the guys that build businesses, those are the guys that my eyes get huge on because, but I do too. So I understand it. But you want people to come up to you because you like talking about football.
100%. I just like meeting people. It's not even the football aspect of it. Like I just want to meet people, and like that's what we do this whole thing for, is for community and making friends. Like honestly, that's, if I'm going to be real about it, that's kind of what fantasy football is. Like we could all just watch football. We could all keep scores at home. The reason you do a fantasy football league is because you want to hang out with your friends. Like that's really all it is. So if you can get more of those and meet more great people, all because of this silly game, then I am all for it.
And if I could layer on top of that, and the idea we came into the show saying if it's not fun, and also I think you're kind of the same, you gave the same message that, it's for enjoyment. It's something that, we get involved with people and get a chance to meet people. But, it seems like there is a small percentage of either analysts or at least influencers on the internet who try to just throw takes and try to get response, and and sometimes they do it in kind of a negative way, and it kind of puts me off. I'm guessing that others get kind of like it, but I think more of us don't, and so I do look for people who are more welcoming, both with their thoughts and the sharing of their guidance or advice or recommendations. And I know I was a little nervous going up to you the first time at the expo because I was thinking, I've read his work, I've seen his work, he's kind of like a star, and but you were very welcoming and very approachable, so I appreciated that. You did also mention, I think, Miami Dolphins, and one question I always tend to ask people, because it gives me a chance to learn more about these teams, are the Dolphins your team that you follow?
Yes. Yeah, and that is That's unfortunately the team that I'm following every year.
Well, wait a minute. Don't go unfortunately, because we're going to ask you, what are your biggest concerns about the Dolphins this year? Clearly Tua, but go ahead and you said what yours is. And what are your projections for them both in NFL terms and fantasy? What players on the Dolphins are you targeting on your teams? Because with me, every year, every league, I want one Lion and one Wolverine. One former Wolverine could be playing anywhere because I grew up in Michigan. So, because I want to be able to cheer for my team even when they're not winning.
That's fun. I like that. I like that. Yeah, I mean, so with the Miami Dolphins, I am a little concerned here, and yeah, I mean, the Tua thing, I think is going to concern every single fan. Like every time he just gets touched by a defender, we all hold our breath here. I've almost feel like I've gotten desensitized to the Tua thing because it's year after year we're worried about it. I think where I'm at now is I'm most worried about Tyreek Hill because if he's not working, like if his body's not ready to go, then this offense isn't really ready
You
to
still
go.
got Jalen Waddle. He's pretty good.
Yeah,
know
but then the
I
next
know we've got
receiver, Washington. I mean, it really is a big drop off after Waddle. So yeah, that would be a concern. And you have no tight end really, like Waller.
I thought
Yes,
Darren Waller's had some pretty good years.
Years ago, yeah, before
Yeah,
the
like,
rap career.
that's the thing is I think once you retire and you put out a rap single, you probably don't have much left in the tank. And the other thing too is we've seen that when Tyreek Hill's not on the field, the Dolphins offense just looks very, very different. And when he is in the field and he's not at his full potential, like last year he was complaining he had a wrist injury. We also saw from the video where he got arrested outside of Hard Rock Stadium, he was complaining of a knee injury as well, a knee surgery that he had. And so we also see this too with guys, I'm saying this like they're old. I'm 35, but once these players get into their 30s, especially the ones that have to rely on athleticism as much as Tyreek does, once you're zapped of that juice, it's gone. And we see that sharp decline. I think that's what I'm most worried about with the Dolphins. It's not whether or not Tua might sustain another concussion, because I feel like we're just running that risk every single game. It's just that if Tyreek is not the same guy he was 2 years ago, I'm worried that this whole franchise is just kind of done and we're restarting over again, letting go of Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer, everybody.
I actually love the kid. Now, I'm not a big Devin Achane fan because I think he's fragile. But Ollie Gordon, I think Ollie Gordon could be a superstar in this league. I want your opinion on Gordon. Do you think the Dolphins could move from a pass first team to a balanced or even a run dominant team after watching what Detroit did with the running game?
I think they're going to want to, and I think most NFL teams want to be a more balanced team that can run the football. I think it's going to be a matter of how efficient they can actually be at it. Last year, they started to lose some of that efficiency, and the Mike McDaniel run game didn't look as good. Ollie Gordon's looked very good in the preseason. He's a guy that if there's anyone that has made me sort of reevaluate the way I went through the rookie scouting process, it's Ollie Gordon, because he looked like a very different guy from one year to the next in college, and then now he looks like a very different guy here in the pros. He was a big running back that wasn't always a bruising running back, and now we're seeing here, at least in preseason and throughout practices, he knows exactly what his role needs to be the short yardage guy that's out there getting the tough yards and making some big plays, breaking tackles, and that's what he's doing. So I do think that he can get an opportunity here. If Devon Achane misses time, he would be the guy that they turn to. I was saying this today. I'm not trying to put this ceiling out there, but we are 2 years removed from Raheem Mostert having a 20-plus touchdown season as a goal line guy. I'm not suggesting that Ollie Gordon's going to do that, but I don't think it's out of the question to think that maybe a double-digit touchdown season is there for him if Devon Achane were to miss time and Ollie Gordon needs to be the starting running back throughout the season.
Yeah, and then of course Jalen Wright's injury kind of opened up that door for Ollie Gordon, because again, Jalen Wright was supposed to be kind of this is maybe an even faster version of HA. So it's kind of like now all of a sudden he's hurt, and this will be the second year of kind of disappointment with that draft pick. But Ollie Gordon's an interesting guy because his the year before last he was like the top running back, and everyone was excited about him. Last year, not quite so much, and so he dropped in drafts. And I think Miami was pretty lucky to, get the type of talent they were able to get in him with a relatively low pick, so relatively late pick. And defense-wise, what are your thoughts on the Miami Dolphins defense?
Man, it's not going to be good. That defensive back room is that cupboard's really bare. Aside from Minkah Fitzpatrick, the depth at corner is not great. I know that they've been cutting guys and adding guys, and they just signed Rasul Douglas, and that could be good. But typically, when you see veterans hanging out there on the market for that long, either teams know something or there's just something not right with the guys. So I'm a little bit worried about that. The secondary has been an issue. The Miami Dolphins have had the same 2 or 3 problems for the last 20 years that I've been watching them, and it's bad defensive backs, bad offensive line, and we don't have a quarterback. We now have a quarterback. He's just in and out of being hurt, and so the defense really worries me. They have a million pass rushers. They signed Matt Judon. They've got Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Chop Robinson, all these guys. They drafted defensive tackle Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, who I think's an absolute freak, and he could be really
Go
good.
blue, baby.
But
he's going to get the pass rush from up the middle.
I know, and I'm hoping that kind of pass rush can help with the defense. But honestly, I listed the Dolphins earlier with the Bengals and Cowboys is one of those teams that I think is going to be stuck passing the ball a ton because their defense is going to be giving up a lot of points throughout the year.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to you. You did contribute or write the draft guide for Football Guys. So you were a big part of that. So what I want to know, again, I like to focus on what's good for the new person. Once we've been in this industry for 5 or 10 years, we kind of have our own processes and the way we do things. But what about the new guy? You got a brand new guy who wants to get into fantasy football and they come to you for advice. Okay. What's the best advice you can give to a brand new fantasy player? How would you tell him to prepare for his very first draft?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I would say first and foremost what everyone says, which is know the settings of your league. Make sure you understand the scoring, the roster, everything, and know your league mates. Are they the ones that are going to be, if it's a Miami draft, right? It's a bunch of my Miami buddies. Are they going to be taking Dolphins players a little bit earlier than they should have? Did you all go to the same college, University of Michigan, and they're going to be looking at some Wolverines a little bit earlier? That's what I'm saying. So know your league and know your league mates. After that is, I would say, enjoy, and this is what I like to do. I enjoy consuming as much fantasy football content as I can. I look at listening to podcasts or watching these YouTube videos or reading articles from other creators, kind of like a coach or a player watching film of other teams. Like, I want to know what everyone else is doing. And I think the only way you get better is by trying to learn from others. And so that's what I would do, is just continue to be learning from everyone else that's around you. Consume as much of it as you can.
That's great advice for people that have been in this industry for 20 years, because we kind of get fixed in our ways. And like, I'm doing a podcast called Snap, Crackle, and Pop with Rick and a guy named Dennis Michelson. And Dennis is a scientist, so he looks at the numbers a different way than I do. So I'm learning from people all the time. And I've been doing this over 30 years. So I think that's outstanding advice. Is there any specific type of information that you focus on, though? I mean, are you looking at just the stats? Are you looking at, I just got NFL Plus, so I've got the All 22 film, and I know what All 22 is, and I know how you use it to break down plays and everything. I just don't know if I have the energy at my age to go down and break down, 60 offensive plays for one team to get that one little bit of information that can make a difference.
Yeah, I don't think you have to do, this is going to be such a cop out, right? I try to do a little bit of everything, but mostly it's to try to add context. So the first thing I want to do is I'm typically going to look at the data. What are the numbers telling me? And I'm saying, oh man, this guy got a bunch of targets, not a lot of receptions. What happened there? Like what was not working out right? And that's when, yeah, I'll go back to the NFL Plus and I'll take a look at the all 22 film and see what's going on. And someone that I used to trade notes with back and forth, Dave Richard over at CBS. And he'd be like, hey, what do you think about the Tank Dell kid? And this was when he was first coming on. And it was the same thing with Jaleel McLaughlin. And it was just like a lot of these guys where you're hearing these names, not really out of nowhere, but kind of out of nowhere when they pop up and you're seeing these peripheral numbers. And so those are the kind of things that I want to look at. And I think the biggest thing is just to try to add context to something, is fill in the knowledge gaps wherever you have them. If you look at numbers and you're saying, well, why did those numbers happen? Let's look at the other numbers. If you're trying to figure out why a wide receiver had so many targets, did someone else get injured? What was the circumstance in the game? Were they down by 30 points and the team had to be passing the ball more? There's so many little things that go there. So for me, this is just, it's kind of like a constant equation or a crossword puzzle where you're trying to fill in every single little one of these gaps. And you don't just fill in one word and walk away and say, yeah, I've got it. There we go. That's the secret sauce. And that's the other thing, is there really is no skeleton key to figuring out fantasy football. It's a little bit of everything. It is an ever-changing game. The strategies are ever-changing. The players, the coaches, everything is ever-changing. So we have to be doing the same thing as well.
I love the idea of adding context. Like I'm looking at a comment from Mace Riney, who is one of the really sharpest analysts out there, especially on the IDP side. And in his comment is snap counts help also. And the context of that is that you have to be on the field to score points for your team. So, so knowing the snap counts is going to tell you whether that guy is on the field or not. And so, yeah, I love the idea of, providing that, even just that simple level of additional information. Because otherwise, someone who's new to the game might say, snap counts, I don't even know what that is. And why is that important? So I love the fact that you're, helping kind of add the detail behind whatever the stat is. Are there stats you don't like, or stats that you hear about that you say, gee, why are people talking about, I don't know, average depth of target or
yards per route run?
I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a stat that I don't like. I would say that I don't like when we give too much credence or too much weight to any one number or any one variable. Like, Greg, you mentioned the yards per route run. Yeah, the context there is that typically a player that's running more yards per route, the team typically has more faith in them to be a better, more skilled route runner. They're going to run a more complex route tree. The team usually has a little bit more time to sit there and pass and have a guy run a longer depth of route. Like, there's a million things there. It could also be that he's just the fastest player on the field and they're sending him on go balls and having him run cardio, right? Like, there's a million things here where it could make sense, but it also might not. And so we've seen that before. Like, it kind of also goes into like average separation, right? Sometimes a guy's getting incredible separation because he's just running that go route against the zone defense and there's really no one covering him. And like, we'll see things like there's just a million and one things that go into
or a drag route against a zone where there's always holes.
Right. Like, these are the things that I say, like, data does a really good job of, I think, summarizing and giving you, it's kind of like reading the cliff notes of a book. You understand what happened in the book, but you really don't. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you know how it started and what happened and then how it ended, but you don't really have the context of the characters and everything else that goes into it. And to me, like, that's what watching the games is, and that's what looking at all of the conferences and the media reports that we'll get, like the interviews and stuff with coaches and things like that. So I know it keeps being a cop-out answer, but it is really a little bit of everything coming together.
And that's not a cop-out answer. That's actually an excellent answer. I did want to go back to the brand new player. When you're trying to advise somebody on how to do the draft, I'm old school. When I got involved, everybody used stud running back. There was no zero running back strategy. In fact, I took 5 years off from the hobby. And when I came back, I first heard about zero running back. And I thought, have these guys lost their freaking mind? Zero running back? Are you crazy? You can't win that way. People were winning that way. I had trouble believing it. I still rarely take anything other than a running back in the first round. I will take a wide receiver. I will never take a quarterback outside of Superflex in the first round. Other than Kelsey, when he was outscoring the tight end 2 by 60 to 100 points, I won't take a tight end early because I figure if there's 6 tight ends, why take one before the 5th or 6th round? To me, it just they don't score enough for one thing, and there's not enough separation between the tight end you'll get if you pass on Bowers. So I got to ask you, when you talk roster construction with new people, remember, a new guy's not going to have the depth of knowledge that you have. So what are you going to advise him to get him started, to get his feet wet? When they get a little more experience, they can modify it. But what would be your advice on roster construction?
Yeah, I mean, my first advice on roster construction is never to go into a draft saying, I am going to live and die by XYZ strategy. Going in and saying, I need to go hero running back or zero running back or whatever it may be, just let the board fall to you as it may. And there's a couple of really basic principles here. One, whenever I have rankings, I want to make sure that I do them in tiers where I can say, okay, this is the last player in this tier. If I don't take him, I'm falling down to the next tier.
Time out, because again, talking to new people, you and I know what a tier is. I typically do 3 points per game tiers, but different people do their tiers differently. How do you do your tiers?
Typically, I mean, I'm not going to put in like a 3-point per game rule or anything like that. I'm typically going to look at where I see the biggest drop off at that position. So for example, I'd say this year, if I'm remembering correctly, I know one of the tiers at running back, like, let's just say it's those first couple there. It's Jahmyr Gibbs and Saquon Barkley. And then I would put, there's a small tier break, right? And then we're looking at, okay, our next guys are going to be Ashton Genty, Christian McCaffrey, Devon Achane. And I'm starting to put guys that are in this tier together that have similarities where I say, okay, maybe there's an injury concern or we don't know enough about these players. And that's how I'm going to start to group them together. Now, for someone who's starting out for the first time, I wouldn't say they necessarily have to do that, but that's the strategy that I like to employ.
Now, how do you place wide receivers and running backs and potentially tight ends into the same tier? If you're not doing it points per game, how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to all come down to, well, one, it's going to be the scoring system for the league as well. So like in a PPR league, I'm going to look at just how I'm converting over points. I am looking at points per game. Like let me not make it seem like I'm not looking at points per game. I'm just saying I don't have a specific set of rules where it's like, well, if there is a gap of 3 points per game, this is where I'm going to insert the tier. I do like to keep that a little fluid. But for example, there was a league, I can't remember which, the Flex League with Jake Seeley, where funny enough, I was sitting next to Rick Wolf for that draft. He was drafting right in ahead of me. And there's no tight ends in this league, but it is a PPR league and there's multiple flex spots. And we get to the 3rd round and I'm sitting there, maybe 3rd round, or I think it was 4th round, where I'm sitting there and Trey McBride is still on the board. And I'm like, if I'm doing the point conversions, this is essentially a top 12 wide receiver that I'm getting here in the 4th round because everyone's saying, I don't want to draft a tight end because we don't need tight ends here. And so like, it's little things like that. Like that's what I'm really looking at. So that's how I would be gauging tight ends versus wide receivers versus running backs. For me too, it's like you want to look at positionally where some of these guys are. I'll look at, and once again, it's tough to convert this for a first timer, right? Where I'll say, man, there's a lot of really good running backs in rounds 2 and 3, but then there's a little bit of a drop off where you're really not going to see value at running back for another, I don't know, 3 or 4 rounds. And so like, those are things that you might want to study.
Okay. So I'm going to step in here real quick and then turn it over to Rick for a couple of questions. But you mentioned Saquon Barkley and Jahmyr Gibbs in one tier. And I'm the original curse of 370 guy. And I'm telling you, Saquon Barkley won't be drafted by me in any draft this year because I wouldn't take him before the 3rd round because I expect a 40% drop in his production from last year, whether by injury or just by falling off. That's the average for people that get that much usage in the 2nd year following. So I got to ask you, I got to ask you, are you at all concerned that Barkley may not be, he's being drafted as the running back 1 in a lot of drafts this year. He's definitely going in the first 6 picks in almost every draft.
Mm-hmm.
Are you at all concerned at his workload from last year? Or do you think, now Bob Harris hates the term curse, but he understands statistical regression.
Of course.
And the truth is, all the curses is a nice little way to say when people get this much work, there's always a statistical regression.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the case with any one of these running backs. You know, if we're going to put in, you know, the concern about how many touches a player got, let's do the same thing then for Bijan Robinson from last year, right? And let's have we're going to get to a point where we're going to have a concern about every single running back, to the point where we're saying, well, I'm not drafting a running back in the first 3 rounds unless they've got fresh legs like Ashton Jinty. But then now we've got to bring up the new concern of, well, that's a rookie on a team with a new offensive coordinator and a whole new staff and a new quarterback and a new this and new that. And so like, that's kind of where I'm just going to say is like, we're going to have these associated risks with all of these players. And so a Saquon Barkley, I wouldn't go as far as say I'm not drafting him until the 3rd round, but I don't really have a whole lot of Saquon Barkley on my team this year. I'm a little bit worried, but it's less about the workload and more about the workload and the age and the previous injuries. But honestly, we have the same concerns with Christian McCaffrey. We have the same concerns with Derrick Henry, who maybe doesn't have the injuries, but he's
except that 370 number has been around for a lot of years, and it has proven to be true. Now, I know Dennis Michelson's done some studies, and he's found that the actual drop-off begins at 310 touches, not 370, but the original 370 was carries, and it was done by another gentleman. Aaron Schatz is the first guy that wrote about it. I changed it to touches from carries because there weren't that many guys getting 370 touches. I've looked at guys that got 365 touches, and they don't suffer the drop-off as frequently as the ones that get 370 do. Sounds stupid. I understand that. I really do. But I won't touch anybody that gets 370 or more touches in a single season. I just won't do it.
And that's fine. I mean, I'll suggest to everyone they can have sort of their rules to how they're drafting. But for a long time we were saying is I don't want to have a wide receiver that's going outside of the top 3 rounds in the NFL draft and get that on my dynasty team. And that's how people miss out on a player like Amon-Ra St. Brown. And this isn't like we're having to like put some faith in a guy that we don't think has ever done it or like needs to prove something. It's Saquon Barkley. Like we've seen him be a top running back multiple years throughout his career. Now the tough thing is just it's always going to go back to injury. If you're worried about injury, then be risk averse and try to look for those guys. I posted something earlier this year on X on Twitter about the players that have missed, I believe it was 4 or more games in each of the last 3 seasons. And it ended up being guys where, honestly, Saquon Barkley was not one of them. It ended up being guys like Christian McCaffrey, Nico Collins, Jonathan Taylor was right there on that list on the edge. So, like, there's some players that I'd be concerned about. I'm not as concerned about Saquon Barkley, but I also don't have a lot of him. So I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth here.
Yeah, there were a couple.
I looked at Derrick Henry, and he got the 370 twice in his career. The first time he dropped 26% in his fantasy production the next year. And the second time he only played in 8 games. Now, to me, Derrick Henry is the ultimate outlier when it comes to running backs. So I'm just avoiding him entirely.
And you have to go back all the way to Eric Dickerson to find a running back that, basically had the same or maybe even more yards after having a 370 plus touch season. But I think you also touched a couple of things, and I wanted to make sure to get them in quick before we have to end. And that one, you have to know the roster construction. If it's a 3 wide receiver starting lineup, you'll probably want to draft a wide receiver earlier because you're going to have to get 3 good wide receivers. It also seemed like Underdog really started this whole thing of I'm going to just draft wide receiver after wide receiver after wide receiver, maybe the first 7 picks wide receiver. And so I think running backs kind of got pushed down. But with fear of injury, I think that at least the last year's season, there were a lot of wide receivers that got injured. So, you're not risk free if you draft a wide receiver early. But I also, and the one comment I wanted to make about tiering, a lot of people get so frustrated when they get sniped. I was gonna, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna sit here and brood for an hour and maybe spend another hour or two trying to figure out who I'm gonna pick next. And if you're using tiers instead of say rankings to help guide your draft, you just shrug your shoulder. You say, "Oh, but there's another person in my tier. I'll just take that person instead." And you kind of avoid that whole I was sniped. I can't play anymore today.
I'm loving this conversation. But I've got to make sure that you tell people where they can find your work, because we got to promote Football Guys and you.
Yeah, you can definitely go and find all of my work over at footballguys.com, on our YouTube channel, FBG Fantasy. It's Football Guys Fantasy. That's the Football Guys Fantasy show. You can get over on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. To do that multiple times a week with Dave Kluge, as well as the Pretend GM that you can find on YouTube. And then, of course, like we mentioned before, I'm doing Unbinged for all of you who are into pop culture, TV, even some movies from time to time, and you want to follow along. You can check that out on YouTube as well. It's at Unbinged. And of course, you can always find me on all the different social media platforms at Alfredo A. Brown.
Well, we really appreciate.
I tell everybody to like and subscribe to our channel. Like and subscribe to Fredo's channel too, because he gives excellent content and he's a good guy. So, thank you. Sorry, Rick.
No worries. I was just going to say, really do appreciate you coming on. It's been just a fun hour, and we could do this for hours. And so excited that I had a chance to have you as a guest, and we're hopefully going to have you on again. As we get into the season,
I've asked him to do pros and Joes with us. So
yeah, and in fact, if you want to tee up, and explain how things are going to look a little differently as we get into the season, Greg, why don't you tee up
next week we're going to start our regular season coverage, and we're basically going to focus on the games of the following week. So we're on Thursday. It'll be Thursday night game through Monday night game. And we're basically going to tell you sleepers to start and who we think will bust to sit. And we're going to try to do it in an entertaining manner for you. And we're also going to track how we do in our production. Plus, we have Football Guys' own Tip Major is going to be a regular on our show, doing to AI or not to AI, where we focus on our people analysts better than the artificial intelligence analysts. We're going to track that all year too. We're going to ask them some pretty tough questions, and we'll see who does better, the people or the machine.
Well, I'm putting my money on AI since
I'm not.
I work in technology, so I have to say that my company's big into AI. So
who are you picking, Alfredo?
I'm gonna go with the people, man. I gotta go with the people.
Oh, well, Alfredo, again, thanks a lot for being on the show. Greg, great show as always, and to the audience, really do appreciate y'all watching and support. And I think we mentioned it already, but hit that like button if you like this, what you've seen tonight. And I hope you subscribe and watch us throughout the season. And
yeah, we're trying to get Sports Affiliation to 1,000 subscribers. We're just short of 800 now, I think, 700 and some. So get us some subscriptions, buddy.
Okay, you bet. And so with that, Iggy, why don't you send us on out of here?
I think